About 1,500 years ago, according to the earliest accounts, the only people on these 18 islands were a small community of Irish monks. By the 9th century, it was Norse settlers herding sheep on land where less than 0.1% of the ground can grow a crop. Today, it's home to around 55,000 people, fewer than what fills a single NFL stadium, who've bored more than 33 kilometers of tunnel straight through solid rock, through 4 undersea tunnels, including the world's first underwater roundabout, inside a tunnel that drops 189 meters below sea level. Same 18 islands, same brutal geography, several completely different ways of surviving on them. So, what keeps forcing this place to evolve? On paper, the Faroe Islands should barely function as a country at all. The land itself is brutal. Arable land makes up only about 0.1% of the total area, meaning you basically can't grow crops here. The islands are naturally treeless because the wind is strong enough and the summers are cool enough that trees simply don't survive. And it's not one landmass. It's 18 separate islands, carved apart by narrow fjords and sounds, with low-lying mountains that limit habitable land to coastal strips. You can't farm here, and for most of history, you couldn't easily travel between neighboring islands without a boat, and a very seaworthy one, at that. That lack of farmland forces total dependence on the ocean. But the ocean surrounding these islands is one of the most violent in the world. So how do you build a functioning economy, let alone connect 18 islands to each other, on rock that can't grow food, in seas that can sink a boat in minutes? To understand why the land is so hostile, you have to go back about 55 million years, long before there were any islands here at all. The Faroe Islands were built during a period of a few million years, some 55 million years ago, in early Paleogene times, when Europe and Greenland started to separate, tearing open what would eventually become the Northeast Atlantic Ocean. As the tectonic plates ripped apart, the North Atlantic began experiencing violent volcanic activity and an early Icelandic mantle plume, basically a rising column of abnormally hot rock from deep inside the Earth, pumped out an almost unbelievable volume of lava. Massive volcanic eruptions produced thick layers of basalt exceeding 6 kilometers in some places, stacked layer upon layer like a lava lasagna. Each basalt lava flow visible in the islands today represents one individual volcanic eruption from that ancient period, meaning every rock layer in a Faroese cliff is basically a fossilized eruption. Here's the thing, though. This isn't uniquely dramatic terrain in a global sense. Iceland has similar basalt geology. What makes the Faroes different is what happened after the volcanoes shut off. As plate tectonics slowly moved the islands away from the active volcanic region over the following 54 million years, glaciers and relentless ocean erosion went to work on that basalt, carving it into the narrow fjords, steep cliffs, and disconnected islands you see today. The volcanoes built the raw material. The ice and the sea cut it apart. The first people to live here, as far as we know, weren't Vikings. They were monks. Early accounts describe Irish monks living on the islands as far back as the 6th century AD, calling them the Islands of the Sheep and the Paradise of Birds. Small, isolated, mostly harmless, a handful of hermits looking for solitude at the edge of the known world. Then, sometime in the 9th century, that changed. Norse settlers arrived, and the Irish monks are said to have left due to ongoing Viking raids. The Norse didn't just settle, they organized. Around 900 AD, they founded the Løgting, one of the world's oldest parliamentary traditions, though not an unbroken one. The Danes suspended it for over 3 decades in the 1800s. We'll get back to that. But for most of the next 1,000 years, the islands stayed poor and cut off because Denmark controlled all trade in and out. The real turning point came in 1856, when the royal trade monopoly, which had long stood in the way of development, was abolished. That single policy change is what let the Faroese finally build an export economy of their own. Once that trade monopoly disappeared, the Faroese did something almost nobody would have predicted from a nation with zero farmland. They built one of the most productive fishing economies on Earth. Today, fishing accounts for almost 20% of GDP and about 95% of Faroese exports. Salmon alone now makes up almost half of all Faroese goods exports. Not because farming failed here, but because the ocean was always going to be the only option, and they leaned into it completely instead of fighting it. But fishing wealth alone doesn't solve the problem of connecting the islands. So starting in 2002, the Faroese did something even more extreme. They started drilling under the ocean floor itself. Vägatunneln opened in December of 2002, the first subsea tunnel here, at 4.9 kilometers long. Nordøyatunnelen followed in 2006, Eysturoyartunnelen in 2020, and Sandøyartunnelen in 2023. The Eysturoy Tunnel alone runs 11.24 kilometers, dropping to 189 meters below sea level at its lowest point, with the world's first underwater roundabout sitting right in the middle of it. The result, the drive between the capital and the second most populous island dropped from over an hour on mountain roads to 15 minutes through the tunnel. Add all 4 tunnels together, and they stretch 33.3 kilometers total. And they're not done. A 5th tunnel, the Suðuroyartunnelen, is already approved. Parliament is funding it now to the tune of 100 million kroner a year for the next 10 years. The plan, a 24.3 kilometer undersea link. The catch, these projects take decades. It won't open before 2036 at the earliest. Here's the part almost nobody outside the Faroes knows about, and it's less about fish or tunnels and more about where these islands happen to sit. Look at a map of the North Atlantic, and the Faroe Islands sit inside the GIUK Gap, the strategic stretch of ocean between Greenland, Iceland, and the UK, linking the Norwegian Sea with the open Atlantic. The channel between the Faroe Islands and Shetland is part of that strategic gap, putting the islands directly beside a major North Atlantic maritime choke point. In 1961, Denmark established a radar station on Sornfelli Mountain, on the island of Streymoy, as part of the NATO Cold War early warning system. It shut down in 2007, once the Cold War had been over for over a decade, and the threat it was built for seemed to have faded. Then, in 2022, with Russian military activity rising again in the North Atlantic, Denmark and the Faroese government agreed to rebuild an air surveillance radar on that same mountain. That same isolation that forced these islands into fishing and tunnel building also put them on NATO's radar, literally. Watched closely enough that a single mountain has had a military installation built, shut down, and rebuilt within one lifetime. That strategic importance runs alongside a quieter, longer political evolution. The Home Rule Act of 1948 established the islands as a self-governing territory within the Danish realm, handing the Faroese control over most domestic affairs. When Denmark joined the European Community in 1973, the Faroe Islands chose to stay out, specifically to keep full control over their own fishing waters. A further autonomy agreement in 2005 expanded Faroese self-governing powers even more. And that parliament we mentioned earlier, the Løgting, it's the same body, suspended, then revived, then handed real legislative power in 1948. Even the parliament here had to reinvent itself. So here's the twist. The same land that couldn't grow a crop, and the same water that swallowed boats, basically flipped into leverage. Couldn't grow crops? That forced total reliance on the sea, and today, that gives the Faroe Islands one of the highest GDP per capita figures in the North Atlantic. Isolated by treacherous water? That's exactly why a military radar has been built, shut down, and rebuilt on the same mountain within a few decades. Denmark joining the EU in 1973 could have folded Faroese fishing waters into shared EU quotas. Instead, staying out kept those waters entirely in Faroese hands. Sure, fishing quotas still swing and salmon prices still crash. Nobody's claiming this place is bulletproof. But it's a strange kind of leverage for a self-governing territory with fewer people than a single Walmart supercenter draws in shoppers each week. So back to where we started. 1,500 years ago, monks. By the 9th century, Norse settlers herding sheep on land where less than 0.1% is classified as arable. Today, around 55,000 people, 33 plus kilometers of tunnel bored through solid basalt under the ocean, and a 5th tunnel already approved, already being funded, though it won't open before 2036. So, what keeps forcing this place to evolve? Not stubbornness, not ambition, same geography, every time. Same basalt, same treeless slopes, same isolated spot in the middle of the North Atlantic, quietly forcing the next solution before the last one's even finished.